So that we have. So because if something confidential being shared during this training, we would not be sharing this video for privacy purpose. But otherwise, if you feel that there's something that confidential and then you want to ask, feel free to key in the chat box directly to me, and then I will see how I respond to that so we all can learn together. That's for confidentiality. So if there's nothing sensitive towards the end of today's workshop, which is actually a 4 hours workshop, then we probably could share this video for you after the training to review, and also probably share on our YouTube channel for other people to learn as well. Okay, so there's something on the video, but if there's something sensitive, then towards the end, then if you choose not to share, so please understand on that. Okay, all right. So if you understand, key in the chat box, say understand.
Yeah. So can you also inform about the slides?
Yes, same goes with the slides. The slides say we would not be sharing with you directly, but if we happen to share the video, so you actually can view it in the video of what's in the slide. So my training is not a technical training, so you do not have a lot of notes, but what's important is for you to understand during the session so that you can actually learn it immediately. So you don't have to refer to the notes all the time. So that's more important than reading notes. Yeah. So there's not a lot of detailed notes on my slides, unlike technical training. So I will not be sharing the notes, the slides per se. But if we were to share this video, so you can actually view the slides from this video. So for the purpose of some of the slides, if you just receive the slide and then share with other people, they are not in the training room, so they will not understand what the slide means. So my design of my slides is not a technical or a instruction slides. So that's why I do not encourage to share slides with participants because for that reason, in the past, some of them, when they share the slides with their friends could not understand it. So that's why I have a policy of not sharing the slides, but in the full training, when you have, for your company, especially that we do an in-house training, then we will have a workbook for you to fill in, and then also there will be business gamification, simulations exercises for you to get a extensive understanding of the subject matter. So that's the uniqueness of my training program. So anything else, Kalai, on the logistic? So if not, I will start sharing the slides
Sorry, sir.
on the screen. Yes.
Xiaomi 2108, please change your name. We cannot see who you are. Xiaomi 2108.
Yes. So the name, rename your Zoom name for purpose of HRDC record keeping purpose, so that they know who are the people attended the training to indicate the success of the National Training Week. So thank you for your cooperation, yeah, so that we know who are in the training room. So it looks like people will be floating in, so we just let them in while I start the session. Right.
Yes.
So 4 hours is interesting because it's like not too short and not too long. So hopefully everyone will have fun and enjoy this session. All right, so I believe everyone can see the slides. That's the opening slide for today's sessions, unconscious bias at the workplace, in the workplace awareness. So this topic is usually requested by many multinationals organizations because they understand human being, we have a different way of seeing things, different perceptions. So that's a multinationals company are the ones, a lot of them requested for this program. Otherwise, there are some other local companies and other banking industries and oil and gas company too. All right, so this training will be divided into 3 segments. One is why are we doing this? Number 2 is what is this subject all about? Unconscious bias, right? So a lot of people say, oh, sounds interesting, but what is it? So we will look into that. And then how the third segment is how are you going to apply it in your workplace if you're working, and then if you're in business, how are you going to apply it in your business? So, or if you're a student, right, how do you apply it in your learning? Because right, you're dealing with the different people while you're studying as well. Example, the stakeholders are in the uni while you're studying with other students, with the lecturers, with the administrations. So the stakeholders and including the examiner. So examiner are human being too, so they have a different responses and perspective. So this allow you to understand more from that perspective. So why are we doing this? First, I would like to share the course objective. Just like soldier, when you go to the um, battlefield, if you do not have a mission given to you, so you'll be like sitting duck for the enemy to shoot you. So for today's segment, so we will cover broadly or loosely the 5 points here. One is to describe common examples of behavior that help some people and hinders others, including how tasks are assigned and who gets hurt in meetings. So our conscious and subconscious mind, and including bias, sometimes they get in the way. Number 2, know how unconscious bias influence our decisions and actions. Number 3, awareness of different perspectives and empathy for other people. Number 4, spot mistaken assumptions and miss opportunities in daily interactions. Fifth one is defining stereotyping, perceptions, assumptions, attitudes, and prejudices, and understand how this can operate outside of your conscious awareness. So this is our course objective. So have a quick look at the chat box now in case there's any questions prior to this that I need to attend to. All right. Okay, great. Okay, right. So let's proceed. The second reason why are we doing this? I have a short quick video about myself to share with you. Alright, so that's a quick video to share about my background. And then the reason why I'm sharing about my background is for you to understand where I'm coming from, especially when I give you examples, I give you some of the case studies. Because like the case studies that I share with you and some of the examples I share with you are not available in textbooks, whether it's online, internet, etc. Because it's through my working experience into the course of my work. So I gain access to some information which I find useful, so I use it for case study as well. So thus I'm sharing my experience as to where I got hold of some of those examples and why I understand, right, in training into some of your positions that you are in, challenges faced by you because like I've been there before, or I have a work with clients who have gone through that scenarios. So when I graduated from UK, I'm a lawyer by studies. So I came back to Malaysia. I actually became a journalist with the Star newspaper. And it's a very interesting journey because as a fresh graduate, I thought the job is very easy. Just type some news, ask question, all right, and then type the news report and give to the editor. But turns out to be not so straightforward because not everyone wants to talk to a reporter. Some love to talk to reporters because, like, you know, especially they are artists, entertainers, they want the publicity, or companies that are launching products, they want to talk to a reporter. But on the other hand, there are some people who had some negative experience with a reporter before, or they did not perform their the task accordingly. Just like, for example, when we receive calls about certain issue faced by residents of certain locations, and then they say, oh, either rubbish not collected, or the drain was stuck, or they had a flash flood problem. So when we go there, usually we interview not just the residents, but also we interview all the stakeholders involved, from the associations of the residents, if they have, from the member of parliament, or the ADUN member, YB, or the local councils. So we get a very well-written comment in terms of like covering all aspects of the response to the situations. So it's a more balanced news report comparing to what you see nowadays in social media. Someone commented something, it's only from one perspective. So for a journalist point of view, that's not professional. So thus, professional journalists, when they cover a news, they will write a more well-balanced news reporting. So anyway, I learned a lot from being a journalist, and then later I was invited to be a motoring journalist in Asian Auto Magazine. So that also allows me to look into the manufacturing industry, because not only that I get to test drive new car and new bikes and write about them, so I also get to visit factories on automotive components in the country and outside the country, like for example in Europe and also in US. So in Europe, I visited some factories in France, some in the France and UK, and then in the US, I visited some factories at Detroit, the Motown, of the motor industry. So those allow me to have an interesting insight into automotive manufacturing aspect as well. So that's, if someone asks me why car companies are doing well, some are not, right? So actually, I can relate to that, and also can share over a cup of coffee, so to speak. Right. So the interesting thing about that is, being a journalist, we always write about what happened, but also we get to see what's happened behind the scene. And then to the public at large, you only see the report, but you do not see what's happened in the background. So that's where the perceptions could be limited. So with that exposure, and then with that insight, it helped me to also to help, and also to support my clients in any challenges they face at the workplace. So that gives me a lot of opportunity to add value to my training, coaching, consulting work. And also being a mediator also helps me to resolve differences between parties. I come from a school called MBS, Methodist Boys School, but some people call it Monkey Boys School. Right? Why Monkey Boys School? Because boys being boys, when they're naughty, they like punch each other. So I have some schoolmates. They actually became business partners, and they got involved in a conflict. And then because of that conflict between the business partners, they were in a fight, and then they actually punched each other. So when I heard about that, so I went to share with them my personal experience, and then from there, they asked me to coach them, and then train their staff, then help them to train their friends' company as well. So from there, they asked me to train other companies. So I became a trainer by accident, so to speak. Right. So that's how I got into the industry. Right. So being a trainer is actually not a full-time job, because most trainer in Malaysia, they are actually per case basis. So they are either people called freelance or independent contractor. So they go into the companies and then facilitate that training, just like any projects as well. So in my daytime, so I'm a legal counsel for different private enterprises. So I'm also certified mediator with Bar Council Malaysia, where we help parties settle cases outside the court. So in Singapore, Hong Kong, and a few other countries where mediation is compulsory whenever you file a civil lawsuit. So with that, if you are able to resolve the issue, to have a win-win situation is awesome. But if you fail, in Singapore, it's very unique because they charge you 1,000 Sing dollar per usage of the court. So that's a form of discouragement, and then also have to reduce the backlog of cases in the court. So in Malaysia, we haven't introduced that yet. So that's why the backlog of cases is like, quite heavy. And then people, when they file a civil lawsuit, they probably have to wait for months or even years. So that takes some time. So there's a benefit advantage of mediation. I'm active in various associations, like mentioned earlier by Kalai. So that was described earlier. I'm also a neuroscience practitioner in brain mapping that helps me to understand the brain, how it works, and then how it influences our behavior traits. So later in today's topic in particular, we'll talk a bit about neuroscience too. So stay tuned for that neuroscience part. Right. So I've been writing before, so some publications request me to continue to write. So you may have seen my bylines in articles in various publications. Sometimes some people say I look familiar because I have also appeared in a few TV commercials. During my advertising days, some friends asked me to, appear in some advertisement or take on the role of a certain character. So that's out of adventure and experience. So I actually appears at least 2 DG advertisement, 1 Pizza Hut advertisement, and among others. So that's why some people say I look familiar. Those of you who like TED Talks, so I've been coaching TEDx speakers since 2013. All right, so here are some pictures of various organizations I've facilitated training for. All right, from NGOs, private organizations, to government departments, etc. So just a quick share about in-house clientele from multinationals. There are quite a fair bit of a oil and gas industry, including 𝐼𝐵, which is an oil company for Oman, so in the Middle East. And for public listed companies, so for the 𝐕𝐴 Group, so I trained quite a fair bit of a subsidiary as well. In terms of GLCs, from here to Sarawak and Sabah, there are quite a few enterprises, including the new or not so new TV Sarawak groups. For private enterprise, there are quite a wide range of industries I've facilitated training, coaching, and consulting for. For government departments and ministries, I've done training for batches of senior government officer of Brunei Darussalam. So grateful for the opportunity, and also others countries like Oman, some of the Ministry of Finance staff too. For professional bodies and NGOs, including accountants, real estate agents, also quite a few universities for Malaysian campuses that I've done the training for admin and academic staff. All right, so that's a quick one just now on the various clients for in-house only, but of course, public program, the list is longer. So in the course of my career, and then in the course of my work, so I have met a lot of interesting people for all walks of life. So including, as you can see, the one in the middle is like the wearing red is none other than Tony Fernandez. When I met him, he didn't have any title yet, but now Tan Sri Tony Fernandez. So very interestingly, how he convert or transform 𝐴𝐴sia, because like before he took over, 𝐴𝐴sia was our client in advertising company, and then after he took over, All right, so obviously the company were very profitable. So when he shared about how he transformed it, so I use some of the content as a modules or the case study. Right, so I love riding big bikes. So I've been riding bikes since my uni days. I got my full B license from during my first year in the uni. Right, so because of that, I work with the various organizations, including the police, PDRM, 𝐭𝐫𝐽𝑟, JPJ, on superbike, convoy safety management, and other bike safety courses as well. So that's like more of a hobby thing, yet opportunity to share experience and also knowledge with the fellow bikers and road users. Because riding bikes is not the most healthy hobby. Everywhere you go, eat and drink. So I've taken on the hobby of hiking. So after 3 times Mount Kinabalu, 2015, I went to Mount Everest Base Camp. And also I've been interviewed by a few radio stations, including BFM, RTM, etc. TV stations from Bernama TV to Capital TV as well in the country and outside the country. Features in some magazine and newspaper too. So that's a bit of my background. So the reason why I share that so that later when I share some of the particular situations or scenario, especially in this unique topic of unconscious bias, it will help you to understand more. All right, so depending on the number of people in today's training, so if you feel like sharing, feel free to unmute and share about yourself from this perspective. As in your name, the department or the company that you're in, your role in that company, years in service, hometown, hobby, marital status, etc. So whatever you feel comfortable in sharing, you can share so that we get to know each other for a start. Because it makes it easier for me to give a very specific example to that background, whether the industry that you're in or the hometown that you're from. So I actually have a lot of examples. So anyone feel like muting, rather unmute yourself and share, please do so. So let's hear it from a few people. Anyone? Okay, so Malaysians or Asians in general, usually we are a bit shy, so that's fine. So if you feel like sharing in the chat box, just key in a few things about you. If not, just fill in where your hometown is. So that would be interesting too, because great to see people from a different part of the country. All right. So while you're keying that doing that, so let's move on. Yeah. Okay, so next is like, how are we going to do this? So this workshop, just like many workshops I facilitated for, is very unique in the sense that a lot of participants says they acquire a certain skill set within short period of time. Because why? We use a methodology called accelerated learning. So how many of you heard of accelerated learning? So if you heard of accelerated learning, say yes, I heard, or yes. So if not, great, because accelerated learning is like, great to have participants say yes. So it's like stepping on your car accelerator and then speed up the process of learning. So accelerated learning help us to speed up the process of learning. How it works is 30% is teaching and then 70% is about experience. So in a training, people will say, hey, that's like, most of the training is like 100% is about the content. So how could it be 30% of teaching and 70% of experience? So let me explain. Experience is like for those of you who know how to ride bicycle, right? Most people know how to, only exception one or two sometimes appear say they do not know, but otherwise you know. So the question is like, before you learn how to ride the bicycle, do you go to the bookshop or do you go to the library and read a book on how to ride a bicycle? Right, so most people say no. So why? Because they see the bicycles, they jump on it, and then they step on the pedal, they handle the steering handlebar, then they get the balance, and then eventually they learn how to cycle. So the question is, right, if you learn how to cycle already, and then if you haven't been cycling for 5 or 10 years, right, today I give you a bicycle to ride, so will you be able to ride? So most people say yes, because why? It's already stored in our brain, in our subconscious mind. So most people thinking that learning is about, oh, the brain, the conscious mind, I learn something, I remember. So it's actually go beyond that. When you study neuroscience, the active brain is the one who learn and ask questions. But eventually when you understood it, so it was stored in your memory, which is in your subconscious mind, which is behind of your brain, behind of your head. So that's where the subconscious mind is. So once you store that, so you will remember it, and then you will apply automatically, just like how you learn how to drive a manual transmission car. But in the beginning, you were looking for the gear and the clutch, but after a while, then you remember without looking at it, and then you can drive. Okay, so that's about experiential learning. Then part of accelerated learning also, we have some inquiries by asking rhetoric questions on some of the topic when we discuss on. So that's part of the process. So that helps you to have a thinking skill, and then a lot of people now they depends or rely too much on the gadget or computer. So always Google for answer. But if in the training, what it helps is help you to think on your feet. Right, so that's why the activities or the experience, right, allow you to be able to think on your feet. So in this training, you're not encouraged to use Google. Google is very useful tools. So discourage you to use Google during the training or during the discussion, because right, what we want to know is your opinion and not the Google's opinion. And then we are also not learning how to use Google. Don't get me wrong. I've been using Google a lot, so it's very useful tool. So it's just that for this training course, so we like you to use your brain, muscle brain, and then from the activities and exercise to learn more about the topic. Right, so colors and music will be used in the background as well. High five, in this case, since you're not in the classroom or in the training room, so you can give a virtual high five or emoticons, whether clap or laugh or smile. So feel free to do it. Right, so case study, when there's opportunity, so they will be sharing some case study as well. So the question is, are you ready? So if you're ready, put I'm ready in the chat box. Okay, so okay, great, thank you. So if you say ready, yeah, yes. So if you're ready, so there's a first exercise. So this exercise also help you to understand about unconscious bias. So this exercise is called cost expectation exercise. So I'd like you to type in the chat box, what is your expectation of this like few hours? Although it's few hours, right? I believe if you participate, and then you will get some value from this session. So write in, what is your expectation? What are the things that you're looking for? What are the things that you'd like to achieve out of these few hours? So apart from the course objective of learning about or understanding about course, the subject, which is unconscious bias. So is there anything else that you want to learn or you expect from here? Just like when we go to a 5-star hotel, so we have a 5-star experience of the hotel. All right. So, for example, a very great service. People are smiling, helpful, and greeting, and then attentive. So, in terms of like food, a variety of food which happens to be delicious, and then in terms of facilities, of a good quality, of high quality for a 5-star hotel. So, the next question is that if you go to a 1-star hotel, do you have an expectation? So some people say yes, some people say no. So the answer would be yes, because like 1-star, there's a comparison to no star. So 1-star experience will be at least cockroaches running around, and then there's at least aircon, and the quality of the room also not too bad. The mattress will be not so thick, but then at least thinner and not as thin as piece of paper. Right, so they have a different expectations, including a 1-star hotel. So just like everything else that we do, right, we have expectations. So when we get the service from any service center or service provider, we have expectations of the service, right? And when we buy something, we have expectations of the product. So thus in the training also we have expectations. So this exercise, hopefully, the end of this exercise, right, you probably learn something about unconscious bias. All right. So I'd like you to do is key in the chat box. What is your expectations of these few hours? So please do, I give you a minute or two to write down what is your expectations. Yes, in this exercise, there's just like any games, there's rules of the game, right? So the first rule of this game or today's workshop is whatever your answer is, all right? So there's no right or wrong answer. Why do I say that? Because we were conditioned from young to always look for the right answer and avoiding the wrong answer. So this is also, interestingly, a lot of people are in their unconsciousness, right? Because they were educated, they were groomed up by the environment and also by school or even parents. So why? Because in school, you are supposed to look for the right answer and avoid the wrong answer. And sometimes when you give the wrong answer at school, teacher will hit you with a ruler or a cane. Some parents are very strict as well. If you give a wrong answer, they also will punish you, right? To either cane you or ask you to squat down for hours and things like that, depending on the parental approach in teaching their children or educating their children. So back to here, there's no right or wrong answer. Why is that so? Because it's all your personal opinion. So I can agree or disagree with your personal opinion, but I do not stop you from having your opinion. Right. So because why? If I stop you from having any personal opinion, it makes me what? It makes me a dictator. So a lot of people also unconscious that they are dictator to a certain people, not to everyone, right? But they are people, of course, dictator to everyone, but the people are not conscious that they could be dictator, for example, to their children or to their colleague. So what do I mean by that? So some parents, whenever the children want to ask question or want to talk or share something, express the opinion, they ask them to shut up, go and study, or shut up, go and sleep, or shut up, go and play. So they did not have time for their children. So when they don't have time for their children, they ask them to shut up and then do other things. So thus, they are not giving them opportunity to have their personal opinion. So that's why they're unconscious dictator without realizing it. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so back to the rules of the game. So write down your answer in the chat box. Right, what is your expectation? There's no right or wrong answer. Right, so it's just that we could agree or disagree with each other. Right, so and then I want to hear from you. What is your expectations of today's program? Right, so though a short program, but we do have some expectation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spent the time to log in and then listen to the session. Yeah. Okay, so I see some things in the chat box. I'm going to open and read it. Okay. All right. So someone says expectation is learning about different types of biases and how they influence our perceptions and decisions. Okay. And then another person say expectation to be able to know and realize if the person is being biased towards anyone that they're dealing with. Awesome. Right. Another person says expectation of this course is to recognize what are the unconscious bias and that are happening at the workplace and strategy to overcome it and make workplace a better environment for all. All right. Awesome. That's very noble and great to create a more positive environment. The next person says, I want to recognize the unconscious bias and how to overcome it in my workplace and also surrounding. Followed by expectation is to understand and recognize what's unconscious bias that will happen often during the workplace and the method to minimize it. All right, so more or less, a lot of them are similar. I want to recognize that what are the unconscious bias and how to handle it emotionally and mentally, of course. Right, so we'll look into that as well. I would like to learn if I'm biased towards my surrounding. Okay, great. So just like I shared earlier, sometimes, because it's not conscious, so you're not aware that you have a certain bias in you towards your surrounding. So one of them that I mentioned earlier, in terms of dictator behavior, you do not allow other people to behave according to their choice. So there is a form of like authoritarian or dictatorship, some people call it, label, a bit dramatic, but then to get the point across, right, is to a dictator is someone who dictate everything and then very authoritarian in their approach. So dictatorship or authoritarians, behaviors not necessarily have to be like happen all the time. So unlike what we see in the movie just now, actually there's a movie called The Dictator. It's a comedy movie. But the thing is, right, although it's a comedy, it emphasizes or highlight the behavior of a dictator. So in reality, it's like we are unconscious at times, like, or rather many times. A lot of times that we are not conscious, especially if you have some form of like authoritarian behavior that we stop people from expressing themselves or stop people from making choices in for themselves. So like parents at times, right, they do not realize it. Spouses, that's why some people say queen control, king control, and then joke like that. But it's actually reality. Those are some of the interesting experience that people have. Same goes with the workplace. Sometimes, right, supervisor, manager, or bosses, they may have a certain authoritarian approach because why? Their perceptions about the workers towards certain ideology about how workers are because of that ideology. So they form their bias, and then if they're not aware of it, so it can be unconscious. So we'll look a lot more into that later. So thank you all for keying in your expectation in the chat box. So why do we do that? Yes, one more. So I want to add on one more expectation. So if someone, right, in this room, so key in and says, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. So is that right or wrong? So please key in what's your answer, right or wrong. If someone have an expectation that they want to learn how to fly a helicopter. So please key in the chat box. Is that right or wrong if someone have that expectation? So this is an interesting question, and then it's a lesson for us to learn also about unconscious bias. So if someone key in the chat box says, I have expectations, I want to be able to learn how to fly a helicopter in this segment, in this workshop, right? Is that right or wrong? So that's a question to you. So key in the chat box whether it's right or wrong. Interesting. So as we can see, right, when there's no answer, it means, right, a lot of people, or rather a lot of us, right, fall within that situations of being conditioned by our background in terms of like, we were concerned whether the answer is right or wrong when I ask you that question. So if we are concerned, we do not, we are afraid to give an answer. So that's why we do not give an answer. So sometimes, right, we call it analyze until paralyzed. So analyze until paralyzed means you analyze whether we should give the an answer or not because you're not sure whether the answer is right, and you don't want to give a wrong answer. So that's why we analyze it to the point that we're afraid to give an answer, so we paralyze, not giving an answer at all. Not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just human behavior. So it's also something unconscious. So not people are aware that they are stuck in that situations. So that is a very not unusual. So being a great leader or a manager, so if you're able to recognize that, it helps you a lot in the effective communications at the workplace. So that is a form of unconscious bias as well. So, all right. So I see some notes in the chat box. Okay. All right, great. So someone said, should we see any or certain internal policies or company policies as unconscious bias, as most of the clauses or statements are favoring the company? So I'm not sure what does it mean exactly, because like, terms and conditions of any agreement or contract, right, is between the parties. So whenever they enter into a contract, all right, from a legal perspective, it's like, by right, they should negotiate to what both sides agree. So if I enter into a contract or agreement whereby you favor one party, so that means it's a not a contract that fully agreed by both parties. Sometimes people compromise in entering into a contract. So there are many reasons for compromising in entering into a contract, because there's no choice. Actually, it's actually still a choice of choosing something that you do not agree with. So when people say no choice, it's actually reality, there's a choice. So when there's a situation of no choice and then you choose it, so that means you have chosen to agree into something not favorable to you. Right. So why do we have internal policies to highlight on unconscious bias? Because so that everyone in the open about some of the unfavorable terms, and then they actually through that agreement and awareness, right? So they will not create frictions or conflict, because right, when you put it in the open, right? So people will come to terms about the unfair clause. So someone said not about right or wrong is not wrong, but they can learn anything from this course. All right, cool. So the answer, actually, there's no right or wrong answer, because why? It's our personal opinion. So we can agree or disagree with another person, but we do not stop anyone from giving their answer or personal opinion. So that's my philosophy in learning, because otherwise, right, nobody want to learn fully because they are so reserved and afraid of, like, saying the wrong thing, so they are not participating fully. So in the learning environment, usually I encourage everyone to see from this perspective, from this context, that there's no right or wrong answer. It's just that we have different opinions on different things. So through that, we can have a more intellectual discourse or conversations about what we can learn, or what we understand or don't understand. So someone says, right, this soft skill is part of a skill we need to learn as part of technical skill. Yes. So you can have a machine, but you need a certain skill and your thinking skill to operate a machine. So very agree with you on that. Okay, so let's continue. The cost of expectation. So a few of you written already. So to indicate or share with you, right, what it means by managing expectation. So when we manage expectations, it will give us opportunity to reduce the situations of whereby a customer are not happy with our services, or our boss are not satisfied with the task that we perform. Why? Because usually, right, if we do not manage expectation of our customers or our boss, so that's where there's a mismatch of expectation. So this is where, when that happens, right, we did our best, our customer, at times not happy, right? And then if we did our best, our boss not happy. So I'm sure a lot of us had that experience in our career, in our lifetime, right? So if you haven't had that experience, right, that means either you don't recognize it or you're in denial. Right. So in reality, it's like we always have certain form of experience whereby we did our best, either our boss not happy or our customer not happy. So this usually happens because there's a mismatch of expectation. So let me share with you an experience I had when I was in advertising. So perhaps I help you to relate to that. So we perform everything according to the client's needs in the contract, and then because advertising is very stiff competitions, and then we need to pitch, to get contract, and then because after that, of course, we value our client. So when this particular client, right, doesn't seem to be happy after we perform everything according to the contract, so I took the initiative to ask the client, is there anything else that they are looking forward to, or it seems that the client's not happy, although we have, like, tick all the checkbox in the contract. So the client then revealed to me that so that something else that they expect, although it's not in the contract, but in the previous experience, past experience with other advertising agency, so they actually have this particular additional service for them. So then I realized that, oh, okay, so because it's not in the contract, that's why, we did not have that for you. But in order to make you happy, so we can add value to you, and then we give you that service. Right. So with that, then I realized that, there's a reason why customer not happy, although we did our best, right? But the customer not happy because, right, there's a mismatch of expectation. So it's through this experience of managing or understanding customers' expectation. So that's where you reduce the issue of unhappy customers or reduce the miscommunications. Yeah. So although sometimes we learn all these things, but we may not be applying it. So we are human after all. So what's important is we apply what we have learned so that we can reduce any challenges or be effective and efficient. All right, so hopefully everyone got these lessons. First lesson is about managing expectation. This is a great tool for anyone to learn or take away for management or work at work. All right, so let's move on into what is the subject all about. So the time is haven't reached 10 o'clock. I haven't got into the first break yet. So we're going to start into the first module. So first module is about perspective on bias at work. And then in this very first module, usually we look into different people's have a different point of view. Just like this caption here on the screen, right? It says, this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. So some people find these captions or this quote very easy to understand. Some people find it not so easy to understand. So different people have different point of view. So it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's because all of us come from different perception, different competencies, different background, so different point of view. So, and also different behavior traits influence our point of view. So the question to you would be, we have another exercise coming up, which is for you to look into what is your point of view about the subject matter about bias. So different people have different view. So I'd like you to key in the chat box, right? What is your definition or perception without Googling for answer or looking at actually, what is your own personal opinion about bias? Because before we look into unconscious bias, right, let's look into what bias is all about first, right? So without looking into a common terms or common understanding among us, all right, if I jump into unconscious bias itself, then it will lead to some confusion. So let's look into the foundations. What is bias to you? So to understand what is bias, right? So let's see what are the common perception or understanding or definition of bias. So please key in the chat box, right? What is your personal opinion of bias? So there's no right or wrong answer because it's your personal opinion. So what do you think is bias? So feel free to key in the chat box now. What do you think is bias? So in my workshop, in my training, right, usually there's no people don't get to sit down and just cross their hand and then listen only. So it's not like a lecture. So my workshop, usually there's a lot of activities and a lot of things for you to do because active learning is where you participate, you think, you do exercise, right? And then even if you have a face-to-face workshop, right, we do gamifications too. Right, for you to realize that what do you know, and then does it work, right, when you put into applications? Because the challenge is most organization is a lot of people know a lot of things, but they do not know how to apply it. Now, if they apply it, right, they do not know how to apply it effectively. So the task with gamification and simulation allow us to have that aha moment, light bulb moment, right, light bulb moment as to what it is all about, what truly is the things that we understand, and whether it actually works or not. Right, so great. We have generating a few in the chat box. Right, so some people say bias is favoritism. Some people say bias is incorrect assumption. Some people say bias judging people, not being fair with others, favoritism assumption. All right, another person say treating some people unfairly, and some people say exclusive. All right, great. So keep it rolling in. Thank you all for your participations in this workshop. Another person says something like the concept of no matter right or wrong concept that had been locked in mind that would make someone make assumption. All right, great. Thank you. So on point there. So because, right, if we do not have an open mind about anything, so we will tend to be narrow-minded. So if we are narrow-minded, then we only have a certain point of view. That itself is a form of bias. And then if we are conscious about it, then it's a conscious bias. If you are not conscious about it, it becomes unconscious bias. So isn't that interesting? So that is thank you for your feedback on that. So with that, let's review some definition for us to be on the same page. All right, so that when we talk about the subject of unconscious bias, so we have a common understanding of what bias is all about. So, so as I put here, the purposeful or accidental assumption made. Yeah. So, so there is a form of bias people have. And the example or scenario will be when we are hiring of candidates, or when we delegating tasks, or when we comparing employees in other ways. So form bias is where we have a purposeful or accidental assumption. Right, so whether the assumption is positive, negative, right, regardless, it's an assumption that we have. So, and then whether it's a purposeful or accidental also reflects on whether it's a conscious or subconscious assumption that we have. So, and then how does it work? It works at the workplace. It's a scenario whether we're hiring people or when we're delegating tasks from a manager, supervisor to the subordinates, or company employees in other ways. So there are different ways of that a bias could happen. So that's one way of understanding it. So to have a common understanding is to look at the shared definition. So other points, example of a bias would be when the applications in hiring are rejected based on people's appearance. So a lot of times, right, especially those of you who are working for others, right, we have experience in the applying for job, and then in the process of applying job, sometimes, they, or rather a lot of times, they never tell us why it's being rejected. But if you're sitting on the other side of the desk, and then if you're HR practitioner, or you're hiring professionals, right? So you will have your own checklist, and then if you don't share that checklist with others, so they wouldn't know what is your criteria in seeking the candidates for your client or for your company. So some of the common bias that people have in hiring, very first one is actually appearance. Some people acknowledge it, some people don't, because they're afraid people criticize them for looking at appearance. But subconsciously, a lot of us actually influenced by appearance, right? So whether the person, usually they will hire someone is like better looking than another person who are not, someone who's prettier than someone who is not. There's also many other interesting things. In certain countries, Malaysia, open secret that we tend to actually also have some form of bias towards a race of a certain race. Some companies, when they put into the application, right, they say it's all must be of a certain race, whether it's Chinese, Malay, Indian, or Iban or Bidayuh or Mulu, so or Kadazan. So sometimes, or even Sikh or Punjabi, right? So that is a reflection of like a form of bias. But if they don't put it, and then during the selection process, they actually select based on the race that they already have in mind. So that also is a form of bias. Just like there's some advertisement we saw in the past where they says, okay, rental of condo, but no Negro or no Africans. Yeah, so that received some feedback or response from social media, right? So those are example of like race-based bias. Gender also, some people, company or organization prefer to hire male over female, some female over male. So it depends on the culture of the organization and also the biasness of the hiring person. Sexuality. So most organizations, they hire someone who they consider normal in terms of sexual preference, as in heterosexual, so as in male-female relationship, right? So they reject any other form of sexual preferences in terms of whether they are homosexuals or not, or other form of sexual preferences. So there is an example of like sexuality is also a bias we tend to have. So in certain countries, they even have certain people have a what they call as a homophobia. So homophobia is like when they got to know someone is a homosexual, so they will like auto reject, or like have a certain form of hatred towards that person just because that person have a different sexual preference. So that is actually a form of bias as well. Another one that I haven't written here is also age. Yeah, some people tend to hire younger people. Some people tend to hire older people. So if you have any other reason or the choice for you're choosing older or younger, so that's also a form of bias. So what is not bias? Later we look into that. Yeah. Every day. Okay, so all this happens all the time and every day because implicit biasness. Yeah, later they will have more to discuss about because sometimes also in terms of height, which is not mentioned here, it could be under category appearance as well. Height, right? So according to research, they found that people who are taller tend to be hired more than people who are shorter. Yeah, so many other interesting things about bias towards appearance, towards people in the particular aspect. All right, so let me see something in the chat box. Yes, or age. All right, yeah, to the point. So next is on the view, for example, all right. So for example, hiring panel favor male candidates over female candidates, even though they have similar skills and job experience. So there's some research indicate the gender pay gap, not just the bias towards male and female, but in terms of pay, salary pay, also there's a biasness because there's a gap in terms of paying. So the gender pay gap, the average median salary for men is actually about 18% higher than women as of 2021. So they actually pay men more than women. So that's a form of bias. So some company tend to choose male over female because they say female after a while of work, they either tend to say take time off because when they are becoming a mother, when they're pregnant, so they will have some time off for giving birth, and then after give birth, they also maternity leave, etc. So they will be away from the work. So that is their excuse or justification for choosing female over male. Some, because it's a very male cultured country or male cultured environment or society, so they tend to favor male as well. Right. So even the example of a country tend to not favor or not have less bias over gender would be in some of the developed countries like in US and in Europe. One good example for soldiers. So they are male and female soldiers too. In the past, they are reluctant to hire female soldiers because they believe female soldiers may be weaker, and then when they go to the battlefield, right, so they tend to be victim rather than the role of a protector. Yeah, so all kind of a bias, a perception about gender happens. So there are many more. So that's one of them. All right. So some people, according to the notes, are industry bias. Yeah. So depending on the industry you are in, so they favor male or over female. Just like, for example, blue collar workers, as in like manual workers, they tend to favor male over female because in terms of perception of male tend to be stronger, female tend to be less masculine or stronger than male. But we have seen, of course, like, they are female also very muscular and stronger than male, right? There are male who happen to be, less strong comparing to female, or, less masculine than female. There are different diversity of physics and mental mindset as well. So that's we should not be stereotyping as if all are the same. So they actually no two people are the same. Okay, so what is the time now? Time is okay. So we go through the next more slide before we go for a break. So here I'm going to share with you a top 5 reasons why people are reluctant to understand about bias at the workplace. So before I give you some of the answers and some of the examples, right? Most people will have questions when I share that with them by asking, oh, what if this, what if that, right? So I give you the answer first as to why sometimes, right, the things that we suggest or propose or the tools that we offer, it doesn't work. So it doesn't work for a reason. So here are the top 5 reasons why sometimes it doesn't work. So at least I give you upfront so you're aware of it before we go into the subject matter. So first, there are of course many reasons. So here are just the top 5. So the very first reason is where the people have a limited mindset. So what does it mean? Limited mindset or limited belief is where people, they are not open to suggestions or solutions. Their mind is closed, in the sense that everything people offer to them in terms of suggestion, opinion, of any ideas, to help them, they will reject or auto-reject, all these all the suggestions, solutions, opinion. Right, so that's what it means by, their mind is closed-minded and not open to suggestions and solutions. So with that limited belief, right, so everything also they say cannot, or that one tak boleh, this one doesn't work, that doesn't work, right, that cannot be done. So that's what it means by limited mindset or limited belief system. So if they have that, so they tend to think or agree on their one way of thinking, which is their way, right? Sometimes people say, my way or the highway, yeah? So that means someone with a limited belief system. Number 2, someone not able to manage the state of emotion. So they are too emotional, or when people are too emo, they say on their social media status, they say, I'm emo today, don't talk to me. Or I'm emo today, don't meet me. So people have a different the way of reacting or responding when they are too emotional. So number 2 is people who are too emo. When they are too emotional, also they like it, they come to work. They don't like it, they don't come to work. They like it, they come for meeting. They don't like it, they don't. Right. So that's what I mean by too emo. And number 3 are people who tend to be embarrassed, or in our Asian country, people say pemalu, yeah, shy. And then because of being shy, being malu, so they tend not to volunteer for opinion, volunteer to say something or do something. So at times, because they're too shy to talk about it, right? So thus they are too shy, too embarrassed to understand the subject matter, which is like what bias is all about. So this got to do with our conditioning due to the different education system. So in the Western education system, they tend to ask a student for their opinion as to why they think in a certain manner. And then if they say yes, why yes? If they say no, why no? In the Eastern education culture, they tend to get people to remember the principles, remember content of the academic studies in order to achieve academic result, but not so much of responding to getting their personal opinion as to why they say yes, why to say no. In this perspective, more so in our education system, sometimes, right, teacher tend to not responding to questions asked, but ask a student to sit down, write what's on the whiteboard or blackboard. So that's not very encouraging, and because of that conditioning and also very strict school, very strict parents also do not allow us to express our opinion a lot. So we tend to be more introverted. Yeah, so that's what happens when we go into the workforce as well. People tend to be introverted and then do not have the courage to voice up. So that's where, because of embarrassed. And number 4 is about people who are controlled by fear. This usually happens when we are younger. We have certain trauma, and then because of that trauma, it could cause certain fear in our adult life. So, for example, if you are young in primary school, if you are hit or bullied by other students, and then to make it worse, it's like you need to go to hospital, to have stitches because of a beating. So that traumatic experience could lead to certain fear as you grow up, when you in your adulthood. So when you're at your workplace, right, if you happen to meet someone who sounds like the class bully, or so looks like your class bully but not your class bully, so that will affect you psychologically from your unconscious mind, right, to be fearful of that person, although that person is not the class bully. So this is what I mean by controlled by fear, and then sometimes because of that, we run away and do not want to deal with that situations or scenario. Right. Number 5 is about office politics. So office politics is different from street politics. Why? Street politics, right? If you don't vote for that person, you don't see them, So, but in the office, you don't vote for someone, right? You still see them every day. So that's why office politics sometimes can be worse than street politics in that sense that, we still have to see them every day. And then if you do not know how to deal with that, also that it become the environment become more toxic and not healthy. And then in office politics also, they usually have a team A or team B, sometimes even more teams. Yeah. So when the either party want to propose something for the benefit of the company, of benefit for everyone in the company, the other party will automatically reject, because why? They are the oppositions. So when the other party propose something, this side will auto reject the proposal. So although it's for the benefit of the company or everyone, so eventually, because of this culture of objecting each other, so do you think anyone will propose anything for the betterment of the company or the people at the workplace? It's unlikely, because of that culture of opposing each other. Regardless of the reason is beneficial or not, they don't care. They just want to oppose because of office politics. So if that happens, eventually the company will not benefit from that environment. And then when the company doesn't benefit from that, what happens? So the company tend to lose to competitors. So if you lose to competitors, eventually, if you cannot survive, the company have to close down. So what happened to the team A and team B in the company? Do they still able to get salary and work at the company? Obviously not. So is it a win-lose situation? Obviously not win-win. So the answer is actually lose-lose situation. So office politics actually does not bring benefits where it creates such an environment of a toxic and unhealthy situations. So be mindful if a hobby happens in the office. So I see in the chat box, there's something says about fear of being judged, inferiority complex. So sometimes it happens if we have less confidence in ourselves, we feel inferior, or we have a conversations about ourselves, which nobody agrees with you, but we keep on thinking of that. So it's our own bias towards ourselves. So, some people say, oh, just because I'm shorter, or just because I'm slightly too skinny, or someone say about themselves, that other people don't see it that way, but they see it in themselves. So thus leads to inferior complex. If you have an inferiority complex, so it's a bias that you have on yourself. So those are something that we need to look into. Later, we're going to talk more about that. Cliques in the office is similar to office politics where it could happen. All right. So the time now is like 10:18. So instead of move on to the next module, hang on, let me double check how many more pages we have. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to key into the chat box. Any question at all? Okay, so we can finish actually this module. All right, so the next slide is on about the importance of managing such bias. So bias is a complex and sometimes a controversial issue, and unconscious bias are, well, unconscious because it's not conscious. We are not aware of it, so which make it even harder to identify and much less know to the true impact of it. So that's why a lot of people not even aware of that. So later we look into how do you identify that? How could we make it conscious? Because of a bias and unconscious bias, there are also many misconceptions around what to do, right? So reducing it will help us to be more effective and efficient. So later subsequent modules, we're going to look into how are we going to deal with that, and how we identify that, how to bring the unconscious into conscious so that we can be effective and efficient and less stress and happier working place. So the time now is 10:20. So we have a 15 minutes break usually for coffee or for toilet breaks. And then please be back by 10:35. So 10:35, I'm going to stop share here. My informations while we're having the break. Please be back by 10:35. All right. Over to you, Caroline.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garry. We're having 15 minutes toilet break. As what Mr. Garry said, we'll be back at 10:35. Yeah? See you soon.
All right. Okay.
Thank you so much. I cannot hear you.
Okay, welcome back. Now the time is 10:35. Yeah, sorry, earlier I didn't unmute myself. Okay, so do you have any questions? If you have, please key in the chat box, or if you feel like you want to unmute and ask, feel free to unmute and ask. And while I'm going to put up the slides again. All right, so we're going into the second module, which is a conscious and unconscious mindedness. Okay, so the sounds a bit of a tongue twister, but it's actually to look into what do we understand by conscious and unconsciousness. All right, so practical dimensions of the brain. So the brain sends and receives chemicals and electrical signs throughout the bodies, from the brain to the bodies, and then these different signals control different processes, and then our brain interpret each of them. So like a car that needs petrol, oil, brake fluid, and other materials to run it properly. Your brain also needs special materials to run properly, like glucose, vitamins, minerals, and other essential chemicals. So that's why some of the food, if the appropriate food that we take, right, so it will have a different influence over our behavior. So sometimes people call it brain food. Some people call it food with a nutritional value. So that's why some people seem to be more conscious and clear and the ability to think. Some people are like lethargic and then weak and not able to think. So in terms of biologically, so it does have a certain impact and significant influence. So that's why people do things like have a proper diet and have nutritional food and also exercises, right, to stimulate all the senses for us to be effective in our way of thinking and function too. So the brain work is very interestingly. So neuroscience is very different from NLP. NLP is a branch of a psychology where how the brain think, and then from the thinking, and then leads to our actions. So neuroscience is like study of the brain influence over our thinking. So it's different in that sense, and then it's more towards a biological aspect, and neuroscience towards psychological aspect. Not good or bad, right or wrong. So different school of thought in the way of how we understand our body better. I have studied both aspects of it. I'm a practitioner of neuroscience, and in the recent years, I've also learned and studied a bit about NLP. Right, so that's to put into perspective how the brain works. So now looks into the consciousness and the subconsciousness. Some people call the subconscious also unconscious part of it. So depending on the terminology people want to use, right? So it's a different way of labeling it. So how it works is that the conscious part usually is only, if you look at a picture of the iceberg, right? The conscious part is the top part, usually is smaller, and then the subconscious is actually bigger. So most people do not aware of that. So they thought the consciousness is the part that is everything about our life. But they did not realize that there's something behind, something inside our brain, in our consciousness, which we are not aware about. So how does it affect us? So in the way how our brain works is, like I mentioned earlier, in the conscious mind, when we learn something, right? So if we get what we get from the lesson learned, so it will store in our memory. Memory is actually towards the subconscious part of our brain. So with that memory, we actually automatically be able to do something that we have already learned. Right, so that's the uniqueness about the subconscious mind, or so-called the memory. So the thing is, like, when we are not aware or remember everything that we saw in our memory or the subconscious part of it, So that's where it remain hidden. So for example, I ask you to walk from the front of to the back of the room. Do you think or analyze first which leg you're going to move first before you walk? So we don't, right? So we just like automatically do it because, right? So it's something stored in our subconscious mind, and we automatically do what we do. So that's the some people say it's dangerous, but also in everything, there's always two sides of the coin, whether there's advantage, disadvantage, positive or negative, depending on the point of view. So I usually look into more on like, advantage, disadvantage rather than good, bad, right, wrong. Because when you say it's wrong, then people tend to stuck in the situation of rejecting it, or people say it's a bad thing, people tend to reject. So it's a form of a bias as well. So, and then if you're not conscious about it, so it's actually a form of unconscious bias of rejecting things that we label them as bad or wrong. So in order to learn, for the purpose of learning, to have a more overview analysis of things, right, we do not part the topic into good or bad, right or wrong, so that the brain do not automatically reject that in order to have a more impartial analysis of a subject matter. So that's why, in my conversations in the training, right, I always say it's not right or wrong, good or bad, right, so that, we are open our mind to see what other possibilities shows up, in our learning. Otherwise, right, our brain will automatically shut down, and then we are not able to learn a lot more. So that's the interesting thing about the conscious and the subconscious mind. So some people say, oh, the things that you store in the subconscious mind is a form of programming. So if you program your subconscious into something that is, say, of a disadvantage to you, I wouldn't say wrong, say disadvantage to you, then because it's not aligned with your missions, or that's not aligned with your principles or philosophy, then it's against you. So if it's against you, then if you do not realize that it's there, so whatever we do, we sometimes, right, may not be able to achieve the result that we want. So just like the second picture you see on the slide here, right? So when our conscious mind want to move forward, but the subconscious mind is pulling us back. So how does that happen, and why does that happen? So for example, I share with you my personal experience with regards to that. So when I was young, I come from a lower middle income group family. My parents are not they are employees. They are initially they work for others, and then we are not rich in that sense, not wealthy in terms of money. So my late father was in the Air Force, so he joined the Air Force before the independence. So with the British, and until independence, he was in the Air Force until he opt out in retirement. My late mother, she worked for others as a cleaner for cleaning officers. So from cleaning officers, eventually later she come out and then opened her own business for office cleaning services. So that's the background. So when I was younger, both of them had to work, and then because they work, so after school, I also go to help them, especially in particularly my mother, to clean some offices too. So I actually started work when I was young. Right. So every time we go back on the way journey back home, or over dinner, so at times, like, you tend to listen to your parents' conversation. The conversations will always be sometimes, right, related to wealth, and then it's very interesting how that influences us. So, for example, right, when my parents are while driving the car, if they see some very luxurious car, they tend to have the personal opinion that, a lot of people who are rich, right, are usually con men, because they con others to be rich. So that's why, in their opinion, perception, right, or rich people are like that. And then in any conversation also, when they meet someone who rich, that happens to be a bit arrogant, then they say, there you are, you see, rich people are bad people. So because of that conditioning of that, right, so plus on top of my uncle, the late uncle, used to be a factory owner So he pretty well-to-do because a big house, big factory, big car. So I tend to see him like, oh, so this guy is a wealthy or rich. The thing is like, from that observation, because of some issue or crisis at home, so the wife, which happens to be my auntie, actually got into a certain crisis, and then she, because of a dispute or conflict with my uncle, so she got into gambling problem, right? So, and then after that, because of that, they affected the whole family. So as a young age, right, when I observe my parents' conversation, I observe what happened to my uncle and auntie. So suddenly, without realizing it, I form an opinion that rich people are bad because, like, if rich people, they tend to con others, like my parents say, in order to be rich, they tend to be arrogant, and then they tend to have family problems. So with that conditioning, and nobody explained to me that, there's only one aspect or certain rich people only like that. Not every rich people are like that because nobody explained to me. So I stored that as my own opinion. And then it goes into my subconscious. So without realizing it, as I grow up, as I'm working, and I've been like going to different training workshops and also personal development program. So, and then like most people, we say, oh, I want to be rich. I want to be rich. So the thing is like, from those workshop, I had my interesting insight or aha moment about my subconscious. So I put that on hold. So now I'm going to tell you a second story, which is interesting. Right. So later we'll come back to my earlier story. So the second story is, right, so have you ever seen a lot of friends or people that you know or you heard of from others that, someone who's working very hard, and then they want to be millionaire, they want to be rich, and then they accumulate the money, and then they put in the bank, they put in the investment, and then one fine day, before they retire, they start to use the money and buy the luxurious car, and then buy the luxury property, etc. So the thing is like, they haven't reached the point of being a millionaire yet, but they already started using the money to buy that. So when their friends ask them, hey, I thought you want to be a millionaire, if you haven't reached millionaire, why are you spending it all? And then the way they spend, right, is actually not helping them to be a millionaire. Why? Because there's a difference between buying an assets or property, whether it's a assets or whether it's a liability. So the definition of in accounting or in finance is assets is something that generate income for you. Liability is something that doesn't generate income for you. So you buy a car, so the car can be an asset or can be a liability. So what do I mean by that? So if you use the car, right, to create or generate income, one simple example is you rent the car out and then the car give you an income. So you actually have a car that is an asset. But if you just use a car for your own usage, and then from that usage, you actually do not generate income, but more for pleasure. And then you also need to spend money to maintain the car. So that is actually a liability. So same goes with property or any other things that you buy. So it can be an asset or liability. So in this case, right, this person go and buy a Ferrari, Harley Davidsons, and all these luxurious car and motorbike, but it doesn't generate any income, and then buy a condominium or bungalow that also not rent out to generate income. So then people ask them, hey, why are you spending it all instead of becoming a millionaire? And then the person says, oh, I don't know. Maybe it's midlife crisis. Some people call it, right? I'm sure we all heard of the terms midlife crisis. But in reality, is it true? So in reality, it's actually not true if you look at it from this perspective about conscious and subconscious mind. So now back to my own story. So from the personal development courses that I attend, so I had my aha light bulb moment, ding, that I realized that I've been also sabotaging myself, right? I say I want to be rich, I want to be millionaire before, and then while I'm saying it, right, I realized that the way I manage the money, instead of creating a lot of assets, I actually spend quite a fair bit in terms of liability. So because of that, right? So I did not realize why am I doing it? So the reason I inquire into my subconscious mind, we have a technique, in doing it. So I inquire into my subconscious mind. I reached the point that I had my realization that rich people are bad. Why? Because from my younger days, right, the opinion form actually become my subconscious, the belief system. So my subconscious belief system, as in like generated when I was a kid, was that rich people are con men in order to be rich people are arrogant, and rich people have family problem. So with that, like, without just nobody explaining it or make me understand, that is not accurate because it happened only to certain people, but not all rich people are con men, not all rich people are arrogant, and not all rich people have family problems. But I only happened to see the negative people, but I did not see the positive people who are rich and yet happy, and then not full of integrity, and rich people who are kind and generous and grateful and have a gratitude towards things in life. So because I only saw one aspect of it, right, so it became my subconscious belief system. So that's what it means by, I have bias towards the rich people without realizing it. So that was my subconscious bias. So of course, we have other opinion form and other belief system form when we were younger. So do we know whether it's actually positive, negative, or whether it's helping us or actually sabotaging ourselves? So that's interesting to know. So of course, right, they are way into looking at that. So that is something that we can discuss later. So here it's actually the objective of this part is to share with you that there's a existence of a conscious and subconscious system and the mind, and then how it works and how it can actually very strong in actually holding us back in achieving the things that our conscious mind want, but the subconscious didn't want. Yeah. So how we could rectify it? There's actually a way to reprogram our subconscious in order to change it, to realize that what we believe in the past is not accurate. So anyway, there's a other time for that. So there's a separate conversation. So next, we go on to look into other aspect of conscious and unconscious biasness or mindset. So earlier someone mentioned about age discrimination. So yes, age could be something that we discriminate people against. So one simple example is that we look at older people as from the negative perspective, as someone who is because of when they're older physically, they are not so strong. They have a hearing issue, or they have a sight issue, or they may not be able to walk around as a younger person. And then also sometimes people think that the way they think is slower. So those form a negative perception against old people. So thus they become a form of biasness. So, but of course, like everything else, like I mentioned, there's two sides of a coin. Right. So if someone who's old, right, doesn't mean like they are not effective or beneficial to an organizations. All right. So and one example is that usually with the experience, it comes with wisdom. It comes with a opportunity to give suggestions or solutions to what a younger person with lack of experience may not be able to come up with. Right, so that is some of the example of the two sides of the coins. There's a positive, there's negative to everything. So in this case, right, in the workplace, especially in particular, when there's a age discrimination, the younger generation will think, oh, the older people or the senior citizens, so to speak, maybe have a hearing issue, or maybe they are inability to be as fast as a younger person, maybe because of all these discriminations or bias towards them, they tend to get turned down for promotions or being overlooked for challenging work assignments because say, oh, you may not have the stamina for it. Being isolated or left out in the workplace, or even being encouraged or forced to retire. So that could be some of the experience of the people who happen to be older. But also there's one side of the coin. So they also say age discrimination can happen to the younger person as well. So if the management team or the person in charge of the company have some form of bias against younger people, say, oh, they're naive, do not have experience, they do not know anything. So younger people were not given the choice of take on project, or do not have the choice to voice their opinion, or do not have the choice to promotions and etc. So it's actually work both sides. So that's why I always say both sides of the coin. So age discrimination is a form of a conscious and unconscious bias a lot of people have, whether they bias against the old or bias against the young. So since we talk about stereotype, bias, and prejudice, right? So let's look into what are they, what is it all about, all right? So people are often biased against others outside of their own social group, showing prejudice, which is an emotional bias, or stereotypes, which is a cognitive bias, and discrimination, which is a behavioral bias. So stereotypes means human brain has a natural tendency to categorize or generalize something of everything, generalizations of everything. Bias is where we have the belief individuals from the same social group to be more similar than they are. Example, an American is likely to believe all German people are very similar across a broad range of characteristics, and then Germans are very different from Italians. So there is a bias in the generalizations of a group. Prejudice is commonly associated with stereotypes for example, our evaluations of others reflects on what we believe to be true about them. So stereotyping and prejudice are similar. So stereotype is a way we perceive it, and prejudice the way we also take on that belief system. So what are stereotypes? Stereotype could be from the gender to others. So in case of gender, so stereotype of gender is like all women are talkative, for example. All men are lazy. So people have a different stereotypization and a different way of looking. So different way because of that, so it does that mean all women are like that, all men are like that? No. So it doesn't mean that, but because we categorize, lump them all together, so it become what we call stereotyping. So same goes with stereotyping about race. A lot of Malaysians are not exposed to the African continents. Because of that, when we see an African origin person in Malaysia, so we tend to think of them as a Nigerian. Nigerian is infamous for Nigerian scam. So people will say, oh, no, all the Africans, people in Malaysia are Nigerian and they are scammers. So there is very stereotyping. So it doesn't mean that all African origin people, a person in Malaysia are from Nigeria. So there are many other countries in the African continent, and a lot of them are here for various reasons and purposes, from being a student, from professionals, expatriates to other business in the country. So they can be here for different reasons. Of course, we do not dismiss some of them could be criminal as well, just like any other race or any other nationality that in any country. So bound to be bad apples is any industry or any profession. So thus, that's why we do not stereotype. So if we stereotype, right, it's not accurate perception. So it's inaccurate. So at the workplace, if we stereotype and prejudice against people, so that leads to unhappy scenario because inaccurate descriptions or perception of people. Plus, it create a bit of a toxic environment and inaccurate allegations of people. All right. So here we look at the difference about stereotyping, about biasness and prejudices. All right. So next, what are the things that the people talk about, in terms of bias? Right. So FT or name bias is a discriminatory act that involves a negative judgment or preference for a person's name. So some people have a bias against people's based on their name. So in Malaysia, what we see as an interesting bias or interesting jump into conclusions or stereotyping is like they see a name with a Nick something. They say, oh, this one Kelantanese, right? And then Kelantanese are like this or Kelantanese or like that. So that's become a bias towards certain name because of the name reflection of a certain segment of people. Or we say when they see the name, like, oh, Tengku this or Tengku that. So then they form a biasness about this person must be royal family, and then as a royal family, they must be like this or must be like that. So that is example of where name can give a bias. And also in Malaysia, it's very interesting also, for example, the Indian community in Malaysia. So the name, we have like, let's say, Mutu anak lelaki Ramasamy. So there's a word A/L, anak lelaki, right? So this is very common and in the Peninsula Malaysia. Actually, it's throughout Malaysia, but the thing is more commonly in Peninsula Malaysia because if we're exposed to that, we all say, okay, this person of Indian origin. But if they see a name like Matthew, anak Roland, for example, then they say, oh, this is also Indian. So this shows that a person stereotyping a name based on the word anak there, and then assuming that it belongs to the Indian race origin. Because in Sabah and Sarawak, so the name, they have the word anak there for the Dayak community. So the different ethnic group, right? So in Sarawak, usually they put the word anak there. Right, so it doesn't mean the person is of Indian origin. It means that they are different ethnic group. So because of that lack of awareness and exposures, we also have some form of bias. And then if you're not conscious about it, so it's a form of unconscious bias. So in recruitment, right, where a candidate name can affect hiring decision through either conscious or unconscious bias motive. So for example, if a name happens to be, you have two candidates, one with the name Tengku something, and then the other name is like a normal name without anything stand out. So if you are unconscious in being biased, you choose a Tengku, right? Because you feel that, oh, this could be a better person than the others, without really look into their profile, or without look into their competency, you just choose based on their name. So there is example of like unconscious bias, since you're not conscious about it, and then you choose just based on the name. So taking into account a candidate's name as a reason not to hire is a prejudice action. So it's someone name is someone in the category of people that you do not prefer, so it becomes a prejudice. So for example, anyone can recognize this name, Henry Charles Albert David. Who is he? So those of you who like to watch a British movie or The Crown, or who like to follow the royal family of UK, so this is actually the name of His Royal Highness, the current King of UK. So then there's also Prince Harry. Oh, okay, my apologies. So actually, Henry Charles Albert David is actually Prince Harry, not Prince King Charles. So Prince Harry's name also includes Charles there. Yeah, so my apology. So Henry Charles Albert David is actually the full name for Prince Harry, also referred to as the Duke of Sussex. Yeah, so that's an example of like sometimes a name will influence the society of the public. So that's an example of that. All right, so any questions so far? Yes, someone correct me, said Prince Harry, not a King's Charles. Thank you for saying that, correcting me. All right, so this towards the end of this module about conscious and unconscious mind. All right, so for us to learn. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to put into the chat box. So usually in the training for a longer session. So, we have also another activities, what we call a course review at the end of the module. We have review of the module. Right. So, but in this short course, because of the time, so we continue. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah. Otherwise, let's continue to the next module. So, the next module is unconscious bias manifestation. So what is unconscious bias? So we now look into deeper as to what unconscious bias is all about. Or unconscious bias also is known as a implicit bias, describes a unconscious attitude that affects the way individuals feel and think about others around them. So I'm sharing this interesting picture of a Rowan Atkinson as his role play as a Johnny English in the movie. So this is because he's very good in acting and portraying different behaviors and different characters. So so unconscious attitude and also how it affects the way we think and the way we feel about others. So the keywords is unconscious bias is a unconscious attitude. And then it has an effect on us, the way how we think and how we feel about others. So that is what unconscious bias is about, the elements of unconscious bias. And then how does that works? So it's uncomfortable to talk about unconscious bias in the workplace, and it's even more uncomfortable to think about the unconscious bias we all personally have. Because Asians community or Eastern education system usually that does not promote or encourage a lot of open conversations or frank conversations. We usually tend to hide our feelings, emotions, and also our thoughts. So because of that, and also a lot of us afraid or shy or malu to talk about our bias if we have, because it look embarrassing. Right, so that is not helping. More so, if we have something that we are not conscious about, even more hidden. So unconscious bias, also known as implicit bias, I mentioned earlier, is a learned assumption, belief, and attitude that exists in the subconscious. So everyone has these biases and uses them as a mental shortcut for faster information processing. So why do we have it? And then it's actually there for a purpose. So just like how we learn faster or make decisions faster is where when we sort the information and place them into different segment, different category, different boxes. So by putting them into different boxes, so it's faster for us to think, faster for us to make the choices or decisions or solve a problem in decision making. So let's say, if someone is like this, he is like that. So in order to make a decision, how to deal with this person is A, B, or C. So this is how our brain works, right? In sorting out the objects and then things in general. So a subconscious bias, right, it serves its purpose, although it may not be the most effective, but it serves its purpose. So it helps us to have a mental shortcuts, right, in terms of how we process those information. So let's say if I see a African origin person, so straight away my mental process is going to thinking that that person is a scammer, the person is not to be trusted, so I need to be cautious with this person. So that is the automatic process of information processing, how our brains work. The thing is if it's limited to that, so that's where the biasness come in. But if we have a way to open up our mindset, our belief system, to segmentize them into a wider category, so then we will not fall into stereotyping and have a prejudice against them. So that means, during the process of storing into our subconscious mind, then we are able to store it in the more effective manner. But if we do not rectify or actually justify the way we store our information into our brain, so that's where we tend to stereotype and become prejudicial to different people that we stereotype with. So just like, certain profession, people stereotype them as say something negative. Like lawyers, people tend to say all lawyers are liars. So is it true all lawyers are liars? Right. So chances are not all lawyers are liars. Only some lawyers lies. But there also people start to go into dispute and debate about what is lie, and then what is the difference between the white lie and the actual lie, and to what extent do we lie, and what's the implication of lie, etc. So that we save that for another day for intellectual discourse. But otherwise, that's how it works. Like people become stereotype, and then from the stereotype store into the subconscious mind, and then that's where we become biased. So in a simplified explanation of how unconscious bias come about. So common types of unconscious bias, like we highlighted earlier, could be gender bias. People would prefer male over female of a certain profession, or certain type of work, or certain type of workload, right? People bias towards certain genders because of their preference due to their own personal bias. This is female tend to be more caring as a manager than men if they have that stereotyping. So it become a bias. And then if that bias, so in such preference of that gender, so it become gender bias as well. So beauty bias, as you mentioned earlier, people tend to hire people more pretty or good looking than the less. So there's a beauty bias. Also high in terms of appearance, whether a person is like skinny or plump or a different body size, etc. Or even body weight. Another interesting thing about another type of unconscious bias is halo effect, a term coined by psychologist Edward Thorndike. Halo effect is about when we have a certain people that we have a perception towards them, and then they give a very strong impression. So it's just like, the halo light, or just like, so the impressions of a saint, you have a light at the back of them. So that's like, described as a halo effect. So if you see someone as a saintly person, and then they have that halo effect, so it's a form of unconscious bias as well. So like a lot of a very religious or spiritual leaders, right? If they have such a big influence over their community, right? At times it's being described as halo effect. So whatever they say, there's nothing wrong and nothing bad about what they say. Although they ask you to kill another person, to you it's like, oh yes, it's like request from the god, or the something bigger than themselves. Yeah. So that's what you mean by halo effect. And then affinity bias, because we have certain affinity towards our friends, our relative, so we tend to give them preference over others. So that's example of a unconscious bias. Many people not aware or conscious about it. They just think it is normal that we have an affinity towards people who are family member or close to us, or our close friends or buddy, or even golf buddy or sports buddy. Another one is a unconscious bias is a contrast effect. Contrast effect, or sometimes in Hokkien, people say kiasu. Kiasu means, literal translation means afraid of losing. Yeah, so that's what is described also as a contrast effect. If you're afraid of losing, so everything you see people have, also you want to have. If you see people queue up, you're also afraid you miss out. You also want to queue up, right? So that is what it means by a contrast effect or kiasu effect. So another one is confirmation bias. People tend to bias on something that they get confirmation on. If they don't have confirmations, then they do not believe or agree. So everything must be confirmed. So it's referred to as a confirmation bias. Any questions so far? On the different common type of bias. Of course, there are many more of different biasness, but here are some of in the list. So feel free to key in the chat box your question. So I'm sure all of you like to watch video. So I'm going to share with you a interesting video on the how people, because of their unconscious bias, have a tendency to take instructions from people who happens to be in authority, or people have a higher influence over them. Okay. So this is an example video of an experiment done by BBC News in UK on the example of unconscious bias. So let's watch this.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind crossing here, that would be great. Thank you. We like to think of ourselves as independent and not easily bossed around. We take pride in the fact that we question things that are told to us and we question what people tell us to do. But how true is this really?
Some smart folk in the 70s showed that people were more likely to take orders from someone dressed in a policeman's uniform than someone dressed in normal clothes.
I'm going to assume the role of an authority figure. Got my serious jacket on, got my heels, high-vis jacket, clipboard. Will people be more likely to take orders from me in my uniform or in my normal clothes?
Give me your most authoritarian phrase.
Oh, you can't step on there. I'm sorry. You cannot step on this this area.
Why not?
It's not allowed at the moment. I'm sorry.
And the reason why?
Oh, I'd better get off there quickly if I were you. You can walk on the black line. That'd be great.
Why is that?
Because we're keeping it free.
Oh,
Thank you.
free?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great. Hi, I'm sorry we've got no standing policy on the bridge.
Really?
Yeah.
No standing.
No, so you've got to keep walking. That's okay. Yeah, you've got to keep walking. Yeah. I'm sorry, sir. We have a no standing policy on the bridge.
Oh, actually, yeah.
No problem. Thank you. You can cross. Just hold on to the bridge. That's it.
Because...
Not gonna die.
Yeah, it's just a safety measure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll help you along. Thanks very much. There was definitely more of an authority when I was wearing my high-vis. High-vis is a powerful jacket. You can't stand here at the moment. If you mind moving to this side, that would be great. Yeah. Sorry, you can't stand here. People have to be moving.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you
That's
very
all
much.
right.
Great. Sorry, we can't have prams go through the main area if you just don't mind going down the side. Yeah. We have a very strict backpack policy here. If you can just hold it in your hand, that would be great. Thanks. I just have to check that everyone's got their backpacks off before you go.
Okay. What about this one? This one?
No.
You have to carry them?
Yes, you just have to pick them up. Are you with a friend?
No.
Oh, there's two of them. Do you mind picking one up just so...
Why?
You just pick one of them up.
I
It's
can't
fine.
pick them up. They're like 50 kg.
You can pick up 15 kg.
Okay, so which is the new dog-free zone then?
Just down there would be good.
Okay, I'm just gonna walk this way then.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a more sinister side to this. Some people argue that unquestioning obedience to authority is the part of our nature that allows police states to flourish.
In his now famous experiment from the 60s, Stanley Milgram got a shocking result.
Some people, when given orders by an authority, are willing to go as far as seriously hurting or killing someone just because they're told to do so. So you've got to walk in line, just go past here. Thank you very much.
So, all right. So the video. Oh.
Sorry, girls. You're being filmed.
Okay, so bottom line is that the video shows or indicate that people have a subconscious bias towards people who are not in authority over people who are in authority. So what do I mean by that? So they tend to take instructions from people who are in authority. For example, from someone in uniform, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a JPJ officers or any uniform body or enforcement agencies. When they give instructions, they tend to listen. Comparing to someone who's not from the authority and not in uniform, A good example is that the way how that could happen is because of our conditioning from young. So I have seen parents when I was younger, and then even now, some parents will tell their children, right, you better eat your rice, if not, I call the policeman. When I was younger, they said, oh, you better eat, or if not, I call the mata. As in mata in the earlier days, commonly referred to police. So that is a form of conditioning that the parents or the guardian have over kids when they grow up. So to instill that they must listen to authority. So if we were very much ingrained into our brain and go into our subconscious or unconscious mind, then we tend to follow. That also leads to a certain fear of authority, and then works well, unfortunately, for scammers. Because of our fear for authority, when scammer call, they understand generally we are afraid of authority, and then they pretend as a authority and then say, I'm calling from the court, I'm calling from the police, I'm calling from the customs, I'm calling from any other agencies of the government, and says you are in trouble. So when people hear that, they are worried, they are afraid, and then automatically they tend to listen and then take instructions or do what they are instructed to do. So when the scammer, on the pretext of being an enforcement officer, says, in order for this issue to be avoided or to be dealt with in the less serious manner, so you need to pay a small fine and then pay to this bank account. So without realizing that the bank account does not belong to the authority or the government agencies, it actually belong to the scammer or the hold by mule account holder for the scammer, and then they bank in the money. And by the time they realize they were being scammed and make the police report, and by the time the police actually go into look for the account holder, too late. The scammer already taken out all the money from the account and then left the victim stranded without their money, and also the mule account holder also they're being accused of a accomplice to the scam, although that some of them or most of them do not realize they being scammed by the scammer. So there's the impact or significance of how unconscious bias can actually happen to people due to not lack of awareness and that, and then it could create a certain scenario whereby it may be prejudicial, it may have a negative implication to us. Right. So if a bias or rather unconscious bias are not being dealt with, addressed properly, so this bias can have negative impact companies that you work with in terms of the company's workplace culture, and then also affect the team dynamic of the organizations. So although these bias are pervasive, they can reduce the impact and with a deliverable attention and effort. So the other impact upon recruitment decisions, employees development, impairs diversity and negatively affects staff retentions rules as well. So whether it's management or HR need to have a awareness of the possibility of the impact of unconscious bias they have. Like mentioned by one of the person or participant in the chat box earlier, HR don't need to be aware of a certain terms and conditions that are not favorable to some of the parties. So this is due to the reason it happened or in existence because of the unconscious bias of the management or the HR. If the HR is aware but the management not aware, it's a role of the HR to educate the management so that management can have a healthier policies and then less impacted by such bias that leads to a more negative working environment. So in order for have a healthier working environment, so we need to identify the potential threat caused by unconscious bias. So Unconscious bias, if not dealt with, can also lead to bullying, harassment, discriminations, where people feel of being excluded or being less productive and also unengaged. So these are examples of the impact of unconscious bias. All right, so before we go into looking as to other the factor of unconscious bias, right? Any questions so far? If you have, feel free to write in the chat box about the impact of unconscious bias, so that I could address it for you. Otherwise, we move on to the next factor for unconscious bias. So next factor for unconscious bias is due to our lack of awareness and understanding about personality and behavior. And then this can be assessed through assessment, or some people call it personality assessment, or some people call it, another one is behavior traits assessment. So there's a difference between personality and behavior. One is that the things that we do is our behavior, and the things that our behavior is the one that determine our performance at the workplace. And then the other thing is like, people describe us as who we are, so that's actually referred to our personality. So thus it's critical not to confuse behavior and behavior, because when you do why is it important? Because when you do assessment in the market, there's a lot of personality assessment, so they assess you based on your personality and not your behavior. So it's a limited understanding about a different personality, because you already put someone in the box. So if someone is friendly, then the person is friendly and nothing else. The person is very compassionate, so the person is compassionate and nothing else. So that's personality based. But behavior traits assessment, it will look into the behavior due to the difference time of their performance at the workplace in particular. So it's unique in the sense that because it's a broader way of understanding and a broader assessment of how people behave when they are at the workplace. So how does it work? So being a neuroscience practitioner in brain mapping, so this is different from other assessment or the name similar to this. So some of you may have heard of another assessment or tools called Color Brain. So this is not Color Brain. So this is from UK. And then it's created by MI6 of UK, and then that became effective and useful. So it's being commercialized, to be utilized. So example, if you can see in this picture, it's an image of our brain. So from the top of our head, and then there's a common people refer to the left brain and right brain person. So here we can see the left and right brain, but also we can see the front and the back of the brain. So the brain in general divided into 4 quadrants, and then each quadrant is given a name. Right, so the name on the top left is a gold color, and then followed by green on the right, and then blue and red. So this is a different naming convention, and then the different naming conventions thus giving the categorizations of the 4 quadrants. Right, so how do we assess this? Through an online assessment, and then you give us a report, and then the report is a 50 over pages report. Will highlight and a lot of descriptions about our behavior traits, because every one of us are influenced by different part of our brain. So one of the quadrant tend to be more active either when you're at home or other when you're at the workplace. So if you're at home, it's called primary behavior traits. When you're at the workplace, it's secondary behavior traits. So sometimes people have a different primary and different secondary. That's why people say, oh, you are different from your at home comparing to the workplace. But some people are same, whether at work or at home, they behave the same. So there's no right or wrong, good or bad situations. It's just that people are different in that sense. So the diagram, as you can see in your screen, indicate that some people they actually this is done for the secondary behavior traits at the workplace. So some people tend to behave more towards certain color, certain behavior traits in the 4 segment or the 4 of the four section of the brain. So some people tend to be more green, some people more blue, more red, or more gold. So that will reflect on like how you usually behave. But in terms of like the crisis, right, most people will have their behavior traits shows up because right there is where you need to look into the situation, need to be focused. So that's how unique it is. Just like your automatic gear for your car when you're driving. So it will automatically select the gear for that situation, so that speed or that scenario. So same goes to our brain. It have automatic features. All right, in terms of crisis, automatically most of us will shift to red behavior traits, but otherwise we will go back to our normal behavior traits, regardless whether it's a gold, green, blue, or even red. So how does the different people in the different quadrant of behavior traits behave? So here next is like to share with you in terms of their characteristic and behavior. So in neuroscience brain mapping, they do show a picture of someone or personality, but for the purpose of your learning, so I usually add a picture or a person there for easier for you to relate to. So in this case, right, so the picture is none other than Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a programmer for Microsoft. So he programmed the software and then to be put into the IBM IBM compatible PC, and then they become widely used as an operating system software. So being a technical person, so he tend to be in terms of behavior traits or goal behavior traits where he's analytical, etc. So if you look at the characteristic and behavior, it says they are serious, analytical person and long range goal, also like efficiency, logic, and accuracy. Thrive on details and discipline and facts oriented. They tend to pride themselves on being correct and like to know exactly what is required of them. So they also want to know details of things work, how things work, and then how they carefully, effectively evaluate any problem. So communication style for them is brief and to the point and very precise and accurate. They speak with substance, or formal or serious. Can be intimidating because they are serious, and then structured speech and the tendency to be monotonous. So someone who is a very goal also highly compliant. For example, when you're driving your car in the middle of the night at the traffic junction, right? So the traffic light is red, and then it's midnight, and then there's no other cars, no policemen, no CCTV. So what will people do? So if you're highly compliant, you will wait for the light to turn green. But if you are not highly compliant, you are compliant, but to a certain extent only. So when you see no other cars, no policemen, no CCTV, so light still red, so we tend to move. So again, not good, bad, right or wrong. It's just that how different people behave differently. So give you that example to show what does it mean by highly compliant or not. Okay, so that's for goal behavior traits. So next category segment is a green behavior traits. Put there a face of Oprah Winfrey. Those of you who have seen her reality show will have the sense of like how she behaved. She tends to be very people person, very creative and also adventurous. So just like the characteristic and behavior and also communication style described here with. So they tend to be very chatty, expressive, fun-loving, and optimistic. So the key for a good time for a green person is for them to build a network of friends and then the admirers who will appreciate their flair for fun and creativity. So green people are more like entertainers, always search for a good time and a good audience. Green love people and thrive on where the action is, and then they are strong on ideas. At times they may be weak on follow through because they are easily distracted by beautiful things or by other people that they know of. For example, if they go window shopping and then they like to see all the beautiful things, right? And then they bump the friends, they will stop and then chit chat with them. So that's what it means by, at times distracted because of that. So maybe weak on follow through because of the attentions taken away. Green leads by dealing with others in the upbeat way. They're very excited, fast-paced, energetic, outgoing. They like variety and new experiences, thus adventurous and open-minded, and also creative in that sense. So communication style for them is a friendly tone of voice, very expressive and confident. like to tell stories. They have a lot of stories to tell. Endless, sounds enthusiastic, conquer the conversations, has a sense of humor, and will go on and on if you don't interrupt them at the conversation. So if you go to any parties or any event, if you see someone in the middle of a group, there's the one telling a lot of stories and making people laugh. So that person usually tends to be very green. Okay, so the next person in the diagram of brain mapping is a blue behavior trait. Again, the brain mapping doesn't give a picture of a personality. So, but my personal opinion here for blue is a Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher being a sports person, usually more towards the red behavior traits, but being F1 being a sports team sports, so that's why Michael Schumacher fall within this category. That tend to be low-key, calm, and discreet, unlikely to make any sudden move or say anything that will anger others. So because of that, everyone likes them. Friendly, likable, operate in the slow, steady pace. So cool, calm, and composed in a way. More like other three styles, they look for harmony and stability, and then they're pleasant and cooperative team players. They have a strong need to belong, as in belong to a group, belong to a team. So they are similar to green in terms of people, person, but the green, everybody also they can relate to, but blue, they relate to people who are within their team, within their group. So they are more of an inner circle type of a people person. For green, anybody also they can talk to, they can make fun and then tell jokes. But blue only limited to their people that they know, as in the inner circle, people person. So in terms of communication style, they tend to be soft-spoken and then their own pace and not hurried. And they usually ask for clarification, they're making statement. Need to be encouraged to share their thoughts at times and also their ideas. They tend to use neutral phrases. It may sound apathetic. So apathetic is like don't care. So in reality, is they care, just that because they are more introverted, more quiet, and then they appears to be don't care, but actually they do. All right. So those their communication style. So while you're going through all these different behavior traits, right, I'd like you also to see if you're able to identify yourself, right? So which behavior traits that you happen to be, because why? It allows you to unveil some of your potential unconscious bias towards different behavior traits. Right, so usually our unconscious bias towards certain people, they label them as difficult because we do not know or understand them. So because there are things that we don't understand, we tend to label as difficult. The things that we understand or know what to do, we tend to label them as easy. So so that become a form of bias. Right. So in this case, if you're able to read your behavior traits and so who you are, you're able to read behavior traits of others, that will reduce your unconscious bias towards different behavior traits. So instead of labeling people for certain behavior traits as a difficult, so you now get to see people like that because they are influenced by that different segment of their brain. So for a red behavior traits, I put Simon Cowell as a personality here because most of you have seen American Idol or Britain's Got Talent. You have a sense of like how Simon's behaviors during the reality show. So they dominant, driving people. We often think as a natural leader. They are not shy or usually modest, competitive, challenge-oriented, and decisive. They're driven by inner needs to be in charge. So that's why a lot of red behavior traits happens to be leader, manager, supervisor, because of that inner needs to be in charge, and then they are driven for results.